Sologamy, marrying yourself, is now a thing. CNN just interviewed 4 women who married themselves. Now this video, I may get a little graphic, so if you have children watching, you might want to pause it and watch it when they're not around. So the first one of the women they interviewed said she actually paid $4,000 for a wedding, had bridesmaids, had 40 guests watching her say her vows to a full-length mirror. She had a friend officiate the wedding, and she actually said her vows to herself. Another woman, and this is where it gets a little graphic, said she knew pleasuring herself was her greatest satisfaction. There was no man or woman that could give her the same satisfaction as she could give herself. But then she realized it wasn't just sexual. It wasn't just lust, it was love. She fell in love with herself. So she married herself. Obviously, these are mental illnesses, but the left will capitalize on it, just like they capitalize on the mental illness of these cross-dressing men and women, these men that get surgical mutilation to be a woman and then they regret it and they commit suicide. But the left will use it for their agenda. So we have to engage this. We have to engage the culture and say white is white, black is black, hell's hot, and sin ain't right, to quote my friend Carmen, the late Carmen. But we have to do it in love. We have to do it in love. When the adulterous woman was about to get stoned, she ran to Jesus for mercy, and he said, "Hey, whoever don't have any sin, you throw the first stone." And then they all left, and Jesus said, "Anybody condemn you?" And she's like, "No, Lord." He's like, "Well, I don't condemn you either, but go and sin no more." We have to love these people, but we have to let them know that they're sinning, and they need to sin no more. Just because it's a mental illness, it's not an excuse to sin. So we have to deal with this. I remember back in the 80s, Dr. Dobson was fighting this cultural war, and I think he was on CNN actually, and they were laughing at him, literally laughing, because he said, if you allow same-sex marriage, before you know it, you'll allow people to marry multiple people. He's saying, if you right now, the definition in our culture for the history of mankind has been marriage is between one man and one woman. If you change that, then what's to stop someone from marrying multiple women? We've outlawed polygamy years ago because of the obvious things that are wrong with it. And they laughed at them. And now that's a thing. They don't call it polygamy. They call it polyamorous, where people marry multiple partners. So it's a slippery slope. And the left uses these people's mental illness to have control over them, to say, yeah, we're on your side. They indoctrinate them in college, just like the Stalinists indoctrinate the useful idiots. The left indoctrinates these young kids, and they get them to fight for these crazy rights to marry themselves, for boys to say they're girls. And if you don't agree with it, you're some kind of phobe. Sologamophobe is going to be the next big word we're going to hear if we disagree with people marrying themselves. I did a video a couple years ago where I quoted Psychology Today, the magazine. They had a couple peer-reviewed studies where it showed that women who identified as liberal progressive Democrats, 61% of them were diagnosed and being treated for mental illness, as opposed to 19% of conservative Republican women. So the left does manipulate people with mental illness. And I just read today, Current Psychology, another peer-reviewed site article, has said they have evidence showing that left-wing extreme authoritarianism is fueled by psychopaths and narcissists. And they said one thing, they will use virtues like racial rights and LGBTQ rights to justify their violence. And you've seen that with the Antifa leader. I seen him on an interview with Tucker Carlson years ago. He's like 30-year-old professor at Harvard. He was a Harvard professor, and Tucker Carlson said, are you really a professor? And, he had his credentials. It was real. I looked him up. The guy's a real professor at Harvard, making like 300 grand a year. And Tucker had him on video punching a Republican, like a college student who was, talking about traditional family values, punched him in the mouth. And he said, why would you do that? He said, well, we have to oppose violence with violence. And he said, well, that guy wasn't being violent. He goes, his speech was violent. These are how these authoritarian, these left-wing extremists see things. If they disagree with something you say, they have the right to be violent. One of my favorite guests I had on the show was Dr. Robert P. George. And I'm going to misquote him here. I'm trying to get as close as I can. But basically he said, the ordinary fascist is happy with you not speaking the truth. But the tyrannical fascist, he wants you to say a lie. And that's what we have today. If someone says, I identify as a girl, and you're looking right at a man, and if you don't say, yes, you're a girl, they want to arrest you. If someone says, I'm a toaster, you got to say, yeah, you're a toaster. I mean, this is how bizarre it is. But it's these left-wing people with mental illness, according to current psychology and psychology today, that we're dealing with. We're dealing with mental illness, But, we have to realize that these people have mental illness. We have to love them. But you don't love someone by lying to them. If I see someone sticking a heroin needle in his arm, do I love him by saying, oh, it's okay to be a heroin addict? Or do I love him by pulling that needle out and saying, this is wrong? Am I a heroin phobe if I don't allow them to get addicted to heroin? We know it's harmful. And even those few people left on the left that don't have mental illness, they know this is crazy, but they use this for power, to control, So we need to speak the truth in love, The media asked Pope Francis, will the church ever change and allow same-sex marriage? And he said, church can't change that. No pope could change that because God created marriage between one man and one woman. We can never change that. But the reason they asked him was because he's not very condemning. He doesn't hate. He's full of love. And that's how we should be. But like him, we have to say the truth. We can't change marriage. You can't change who you are. God created you a man or a woman. You can't change that. God created marriage between one man and one woman. You can't change that. You can't even make marriage between you and yourself. You can't. It's like trying to say a tree is a bird. You just can't, So sologamy is the word of the day, but, don't let it get you down. I could actually think of like 4 funny jokes, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna hold my fire. And I said yesterday I'm gonna try and be more loving on social media, so I'm gonna hold my fire with my sologamy jokes. But I'm gonna tell you this: we live in crazy times. Everything's changing. Things are changing fast. But the one thing that doesn't change is God. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And Jesus Christ told Peter, you are the rock, and I will build my church on this rock, and the gates of hell will not prevail. 2,000 years, the gates of hell have not prevailed against our church. Even though we've had bad leaders and bad Catholics, the church still remains, and the church continues to grow. I was excited to come back to the Catholic Church when I realized historically I could prove the church that Jesus established. I always wanted to get back to that ancient church that he established. And the Catholic Church is the only church. We have apostolic succession. So every bishop can trace his ordination if you go down the line and see who ordained him and who ordained him all the way back to an apostle. You can look at the popes. It was Peter, then Linus, then Cletus, then Clement, and they keep going on a broken chain, 266 popes until Pope Francis. But not only that, our moral teachings have not changed. The church has always been against divorce. The church has always said marriage is between one man and one woman. The church has always stood up against abortion. We've never changed one single moral teaching. While other churches change all the time, we never change. We never change one doctrine or dogma. Now, disciplines can change, and I'm going to have someone say, oh, what about this? You used to say Mass in Greek and Aramaic, then you started saying it in Latin, now you say it in the language of the people. That's a discipline that can change. Just like popes, priests were allowed to be married in the Latin rite. Now they're only allowed to be married in the Eastern Catholic rite. And that can change too. It's a discipline. Our moral teachings, our dogmas, and our doctrines have never changed for 2,000 years. So you want certainty, you want to find peace in this crazy changing world, go to Mass. You want to find peace, go to adoration and adore Jesus Christ in the chapel. There's a lot more I want to say, but I do work for a living, and I'm looking, and it looks like I got to start slinging some cases here in a minute. But just remember this. The pendulum always swings politically, and you see with Bud Light and Target, the average person is getting fed up with this nonsense. But we got to remember, as Catholic Christians, this is a spiritual battle we fight. St. Paul said we don't battle against flesh and blood. We battle against spiritual principalities in high places, and Satan would love you to love yourself and to marry yourself. You see, Satanists tell you all the time, we don't believe in Satan. We believe in ourselves. We worship ourselves. That's a lie from Satan, because he would love you to not believe in him and just believe in yourself. But the top tier Satanists, the kind of Satanists that exorcist priests, Father Vincent Lamport, who was on my show, talked about, and exorcist psychiatrist, Dr. Ivy League, Yale-trained psychiatrist, Dr. Richard Gallagher said on my show, he's dealt with people that were really at high levels of Satanism, and they know Satan is real. They experienced Satan's power and Satan's wickedness. And just like, the left-wing politicians like to have useful idiots that they just tell them whatever they want to believe, these Satanists at high levels have useful idiots to say, yeah, you could call yourself a Satanist, but really you're just for abortion rights. You're just for gay rights. You don't believe in Satan. And that's what's happening in this country. There's like a movement. There's like a big growth in the Church of Satan right now. But they're saying they don't believe in Satan. They believe in themselves. And how much more can you love yourself than to marry yourself, But just remember that. And, like I said, the pendulum swings. Bud Light found out the hard way. Target's finding out the hard way, And we don't just win on the negative, we win on the positive. So we boycott the woke companies. We tell them, you go woke, you go broke. But we encourage the pro-life companies, the pro-family company. And there's no company that I know of that is more pro-life and more pro-family than realestateforlife.org. So if you're buying or selling real estate or have any real estate needs, go to realestateforlife.org. And I guarantee you'll be doing business with a pro-life Catholic Christian real estate company. And if you need an agent, he or she will be the most experienced, most professional, and they'll be pro-life Christian, probably a Catholic Christian, but we have some Protestant Christians that are, strong Christians in the faith and strongly pro-life. But, we vote at the polls with our ballots, and, we got to vote pro-life, but every day we vote with our money. So vote pro-life with your money and go to realestateforlife.org. God bless, and stay Catholic, and be a Sologamy-phobe. God bless.